BMW's most successful and most renowned marketing campaign ever has been the ultimate driving machine. What makes a car the ultimate driving machine? Is it just the chassis dynamics, how it feels to drive, how it turns? If that were the case, we'd all be driving Miatas, and we're not. The engine has a lot to do with it, and BMW engines are famous for good things and for bad things. Today, we're going to be going over 5 of the most notorious BMW engines, as well as all of their Achilles heels that some would argue make them untouchable and unreliable. And then we're going to be talking about and topping it all off with one that is absolutely bulletproof. Now there's a BMW sitting behind me. It's no secret I love BMWs. I would still own any BMW that comes with these 5 unreliable engines that we're going to talk about today, because if you know what the Achilles heel is and you spend the money to take care of it, you're not going to have to deal with that issue ever again. And pretty much outside of those issues, they're generally considered to be quite reliable. To get us started off, the first engine that we're going to be discussing today is the famous BMW S54. This high revving, high compression, naturally aspirated 3-liter straight-six engine is a blast to drive. It makes a lot of horsepower per liter, and it responds very well to modifications and is generally considered to be pretty dang reliable, except for 2 major problems that if you don't address, it could be the end of that engine for you. Problem number 1 is the infamous rod bearings. Now, rod bearings typically aren't something that you have to replace in most engines, but on the S54 with its tight tolerances, if you don't baby the car until it heats up every time that you drive it, or if you're just not using the right oil, it can cause the rod bearings to wear out pretty prematurely, which then gives you rod knock or just completely destroys the engine. So what most people do to bulletproof the S54, one of the first things you do if you owned it and it hadn't been done already, is get the rod bearing swapped out with an aftermarket version that tend to be a little bit more reliable and needing to be replaced much less often than the OEM ones the car came with. One of the things that you'll want to continue to do is get oil analysis done to see if your rod bearings are wearing out and it's time to change them. On to failure number 2 of the S54, and that is the Vanos. Part of bulletproofing the S54 engine and the Vanos are taking care of the cam flange bolts, which have a tendency to back out and shear off, and getting a new exhaust hub with better tabs that are less likely to break off. The clearance in the holes where the tab would enter was a little large, so as you're accelerating and decelerating, that tab would bounce around a little bit and end up shearing off. A metal part in your engine that's not where it's supposed to be can cause some big problems. So what you'll want to do if you're looking into a car that comes with an S54 is either budget in getting those things done yourself, or else make sure that you're buying a car that has already had these things taken care of for you. Once you do, you can beat the crap out of an S54. They're wonderful engines and you're going to enjoy its entire ownership that you have it for. Let's move on to engine number 2. And engine number 2 is much different than an S54. It is the S63, which is a twin turbocharged 4.4 liter high output V8 engine. And BMW is actually the first company to mass produce engines, V8s, that have a hot V configuration. What that means is instead of having the exhaust ports on the outside, they're on the inside. And that means the turbochargers are in there as well. That gives you a really short distance between the holes in the head and the turbos, which gives it really fast spool and high performance. But it also had an effect that maybe was unforeseen with all of that heat being trapped inside that compact engine block, and it fried the crap out of the valve stem seals. What that did was shrink them, it cracked them, it caused them to fail, and bled a lot of oil into the combustion chamber, which then led to oil consumption, which then led to low oil, which then led to your bearings, main bearings and rod bearings wearing out, which then led to a lot of catastrophic engine failures. I have seen more S63s and the non-M version related engines replaced than any other BMW engine. And it's so sad because this is just such a small part. And as these failures begin to manifest themselves, there hadn't really been any tools or technology invented to replace these cheaply. It was a big job that meant the heads needed to come off, and it certainly wasn't a small bill. In fact, none of the fixes on this list are things that are cheap to do. You're gonna have to invest a couple $1,000s or or more in this case, to get these issues taken care of. Today, it's not that big of an issue. You can now replace the valve stem seals without taking the heads off. And once you get that done, there's not too many things you have to worry about, but it did become a pretty huge issue with the S63. A lot of people, when looking to buy a BMW, can feel a little overwhelmed. It can be hard to know exactly what to expect for things like maintenance costs, for the specific models you're looking at, or even what all the problems are that you should be aware of before buying. Things that might even help you get a better deal if you're aware of them or could point them out. Or maybe you're selling and want to make sure you know how to get the most money out of your car. I offer one-on-one call collaborations where we can connect to discuss whatever your situation is and what I personally would do in your situation. If you're interested, send me an email to my contact in the description below. Moving on to engine number 3, we're gonna stick with the V8, but this time it doesn't have any turbos. It's got a little bigger displacement at 4.9 liters, and it came in one of the best vehicles BMW ever made, which is the E39 M5. The failure in this engine is unlike any of the other engines we're going to talk about today, and it has to do with the timing chain guides and the timing chain tensioners. You see, timing chain guides are made out of plastic, and that's not unique to BMW. And what happens over time with the ones in the E39 M5 V8 is they started to crack from just heat cycling and age, and they would fall off, causing slack in the timing chain, causing the chain to slap around and make a ton of noise. That was typically your earliest indication that you had a problem. If you didn't take care of that, then the tensioners couldn't keep up with all that slack in the chain. You could skip time, catastrophically destroy an amazing and an expensive engine. Good thing is, again, like all the other engines, once you take care of this problem, they are quite reliable and of course just a complete joy to drive. But this isn't going to be a cheap fix, and you need to know about it if you're going to own a car with any naturally aspirated V8 engine, M engine or not, from the 2000s and earlier. And now I think with engine number 4, it's time to get back to the straight sixes. This time it's got twin turbos. It's still 3 liters, and it's actually the newest engine that we're going to be talking about today, and that is the BMW S55, most notoriously coming in the F80 M3. This engine loved being tuned. This engine loved making big horsepower, but with that bigger horsepower came problems that became a little more common than ones that were left stock. And as these vehicles have aged, this issue that was once thought to be overblown became a real issue that people know that you have to address if you're going to own a car like this, especially if you're going to tune it, and that is the crank hub issues. If you've never heard of a crank hub or this crank hub issue, it is essentially a press-fit hub on the end of the crankshaft that's held on by a bolt. There are no gears or tabs to hold it in place. It's just a friction-fit piece that can slip, which, because it drives the chain, can also put the car out of time. And when the car's out of time, valves start getting pistons, bad things start to happen, and big expensive problems start to happen. There have been many S55s that have been replaced to this exact problem. And it is much more common in the engines that have the DCT, the dual clutch transmission, because when it shifts gears, it shifts lightning fast and causes those RPM fluctuations to happen. Maybe you're at redline, just over 7,000 RPMs, you shift the gear down to 5 or so. That quick change can cause the friction to be overcome on the crank hub and put the car out of time. All of a sudden you've got a blown engine, you had no idea what happened. Or you could simply be slowing down and downshifting to a higher RPM, and because it happens so fast, that crank hub can slip. And it is just well known that if you're going to own a car with an S55, you need to take care of the crank hub. What you want to do is get an updated version of the crank hub that has holes and tabs that hold it in place, so it's not just a friction fit piece. Today's 5th engine that we're going to talk about, the last unreliable engine before we get into BMW's most reliable M engine they've ever made, is actually going to be 2 engines looped into one because their problem is the same and they're very, very similar engines, and that is the S65 V8 and the S85 V10. These 2 engines suffer from essentially the same catastrophic failure, and it's worse than what was in the S54, and that is, again, the rod bearings. You know, these cars, when you get in them, they motivate you. The engines motivate you to drive them hard, to rev them out to high RPMs, to leave them there and just have a lot of fun. A lot of people think that when you're warming up a car, you can just look at the coolant temperature gauge, and once that's warm, you're good to go. But what you don't realize is that the oil takes longer to heat up than the coolant. Also, what happens a lot of times, people just get in the car, start it, and you take off. You start driving it hard right away. That oil is really thick like molasses when it's cold, and it doesn't really get to the lubricity that it needs to flow quickly through all the tiny passages of the engine, including the things like the rod bearings, until it really heats up to operating temperature. That's what's probably caused more premature failures in the S65 and the S85 than anything else. Unfortunately, unless you're getting oil analysis done at every oil change, a lot of times when this problem hits, there's no warning except for when you see a rod shoot out the side of your engine and now there's a bunch of oil on the ground and now you need a new engine. Some fail at 25,000 miles, 30,000 miles. Others, you can pull these rod bearings out with 150,000 miles and they look pretty dang worn out, but they haven't quite failed yet. So if you don't want to experience an engine failure on one of these very expensive engines, you just take care of the bearings. Newer versions, aftermarket versions that tend to have a much better reputation for reliability and not needing to be swapped out as often as the OEM ones. All right, so now that we have gone over 5 of BMW's most famous M engines and their problems that can cause catastrophic failures, we're gonna get into one of BMW's maybe a little less known M engines, maybe a little less favored M engines, maybe a little less powerful M engines, but it is certainly the most reliable M engine ever made, and it is found in the car right behind me, and that is the BMW S50 or the S52 US. That's right, the engines that only came in and were unique to the United States market. Guess what problems they don't have? Rod bearing issues. Guess what problems they don't have? Timing chain and guide issues. Guess what problems they don't have? Any problems with the valve stem seals. You can pretty much get in them, drive them however you want. For hundreds of thousands of miles, and you're not going to have any major catastrophic failures. Just like a Toyota or a Honda, as cars get older, things are gonna break and they need to get replaced, but nothing typically that's large or catastrophic or causes you to need to open up or rebuild the engine. Maybe that's why a lot of people like to use these cars for motorsports and drifting. You can bust apart one of these S52s or S50s and the condition of the inside, as long as they're well maintained, looks better than any of these other engines we've talked about with half the mileage. And that, my friends, is BMW's most reliable M engine ever made. If you own any BMWs with these engines that we've talked about today, put it in the comments below. Have you had to deal with any of these issues before personally? Or did you get lucky enough to have the previous owner take care of it? Or have you just taken a gamble, driven it for tens and tens of thousands of miles, and just decided not to worry about it? You guys are crazy. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Maybe you learned a thing or two. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more, and we will see you in the next one.